And welcome to Crossfire. I am Paul Begala on the left.
I'm Etsy Cupp on the right. In the Crossfire tonight, guests with very different opinions of Hillary Clinton. Her new book comes out tomorrow, and she'll be starting a high-profile campaign swing. Promotional tour. But she's getting a little lost in translation. For one, she doesn't speak progressive. Just ask one. For another, she doesn't speak millennial, which she learned the hard way in 2008. And as you can clearly see in her interview with ABC's Diane Sawyer, unlike her husband, she hasn't figured out how to speak regular person.
We came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We had no money when we got there, and we struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education. It was not easy. We had to make double the money because of, obviously, taxes, and then pay off the debts and get us houses and our family members.
Dead broke, get us houses, plural, as in these houses in two of the most expensive neighborhoods you can find. So the two most recognizable politicians in America for 2 decades couldn't budget their money the way Americans have to. Paul, even you have to admit, this one is not going to go over well in the heartland.
We have finally found the only millionaires in America who the Republicans don't like.
Well, come on!
In fact, she understates when she says dead broke. They were $12 million in debt for legal bills from Ken Starr and that whole right-wing machine that tried to drive them into bankruptcy. So thank God we live in a country where Hillary and Bill could actually now thrive.
A little Goldman Sachs ATM can't fix, right?
Well, Hillary had an $8 million book advance before she even left the White House. If you can't budget a mortgage on that, come on.
It's worth every penny. In the Crossfire, Tracy Sepple, who advises the Ready for Hillary PAC, and Tim Miller. Tim is the co-author of the new, perfectly timed anti-Clinton ebook called Cleverly Failed Choices.
Oh, now, I see what you did there.
Yeah, now, full disclosure, you all know this, but I worked for President Clinton for many years. I've known Hillary now 23 years. I love her. I want her to run for president. I deeply hope she does. You should also know, though, that I advise Priorities USA Action, which is a super PAC that helped re-elect President Obama and which I dearly hope will elect President Hillary.
Well,
now,
we will see.
With that disclosure said, Mr. Miller, first, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
I hear this canard from my friends on the right, and in fact, particularly your organization. Hillary hasn't done anything as Secretary of State. There's not an important accomplishment. So let me just give you the top 10.
Sure.
Okay. The toughest sanctions in a generation on Iran. The ceasefire in Gaza. She backed the mission to kill. We'll get to this. We backed the mission to kill Osama bin Laden. She freed a Chinese dissident. I go on and on and on. And I hope we cover all 10 of these, and then maybe we'll do a special edition to cover 10 more. But let me start with number 3, which is the ceasefire in Gaza. Hamas terrorists were bombing Israel, shooting rockets into Israel. Hillary Clinton stepped in and negotiated a ceasefire. Now, I think, of course, that was great. It was good for America, good for Israel, good for peace. More importantly, here's what the Prime Minister of Israel says about my friend Hillary. Take a look.
I've just had the opportunity to work with her to achieve the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Hillary Clinton is a strong and determined leader. She's both principled and pragmatic, and she knows how to get the job done.
Now, I'm sure that's going to be in your book. I haven't had time to read your ebook yet. Strong and principled. This is the Prime Minister of Israel. So tell me that you know more about Israel's security than Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Well, I'm certainly not going to do that, Paul. But what I will tell you is when it comes to Israel, on the campaign trail in 2008, Hillary promised that she was going to support an undivided Jerusalem. Then she goes to the State Department. What does she do? She tries to support negotiations where she points fingers at Israel. Says that Israel's the problem and says in order to come to a negotiation, we need to not have an undivided Jerusalem. Also on the Iran sanctions, which was the top thing on your list, when Congress tried to pass the toughest Iran sanctions that brought Iran to the table, that got us to this deal, Hillary Clinton and the State Department were over in the Senate talking to your buddy Bob Menendez saying, don't pass these are too harsh, these are too harsh. Nonsense. Bob Menendez said it himself.
She got the Russians, the Chinese, and the French to sign on to the sanctions that delivered the Iranians to the table.
No,
I think it's a little early to say how those sanctions have worked out yet, but Tracy, I'm really glad that Paul brought up Israel because I've read the chapter in her book on Israel, and let me tell you, there is a doozy in there. Let me just read. She writes of her first visit to Israel. I got my first glimpse of life under occupation for Palestinians who were denied the dignity and determination that Americans take for granted. Now, I'm sure I don't have to remind anyone at this table that Chris Christie had to apologize for using similar language about Palestinian occupation. Is Hillary Clinton going to apologize to Israel for using that same language?
Well, I hope that Chris Christie is going to write a book, because that's the one that I would read. But let me first say, you quoted from the book, and I think Tim spent all weekend reading it. I haven't read it yet. It's not out. So the answer that I'll give you is about a bigger issue when it comes to Hillary Clinton's diplomatic agenda. And that is the way that she has expanded the notion of diplomacy in the State Department to include an incredibly important set of issues, which have to do with women and girls.
Tracy, let me just stop you.
Let me just stop you before you
education don't
and
answer my question. Let's take for granted that the quote I read is actually in the book. Does she owe Israel an apology for using the same language that Chris Christie used and then had to apologize to pro-Israel voters and pro-Israel groups?
Hillary Clinton is going to stand by the words in her book. She is not going to apologize for something she need not apologize for. And once that book is out,
the Palestinian territories are occupied, then
she will be making that point, as she herself should.
So then you think that she believes that the Palestinian territories are occupied. She's not going to apologize for that, and she asserted that on purpose.
I'm sure that when we all actually read the book and listen to her give these interviews, her words will stand for themselves.
She said it twice in the book, so I think
yeah, she said it, but I'll take your word for it that she is unapologetic.
Well, and I am unapologetically pro-Israel, and Hillary is very, very strong in this. If that's the tree you guys want to bark up, I wish you luck. So let's move on to another Hillary accomplishment, which is, I think, strategically very, very important. The pivot to Asia. Particularly a couple of things. First off, she was the one in the United States, but she was our Secretary of State, who stood up against this Chinese expansionism into the South China Sea, right? There's a couple of islands in dispute with Vietnam, an old enemy of America. Hillary sided with the Vietnamese, helped back off the Chinese. She, in Beijing, freed the dissident civil rights activist and lawyer Chen Guangdang. Do you think that were those bad things? Or can you at least admit that, certainly in Asia, she has helped strengthen America, opening up to Burma, checking Chinese territorial expansionism, standing for human rights?
I think that she worked with Mitch McConnell in efforts in Burma. I think that obviously she tried to at least give lip service and make some progress in the pivot to Asia. But here's the thing, Paul. What are the tangible results that she's going to talk about? I mean, you have this list of 10 things you've talked about. The first thing on your list was something she opposed. Now we're talking about a pivot.
I'm not going to let you get away with that. She is the reason we have sanctions on Iran.
Now we're talking to a pivot to Asia, which is rhetorical.
No, it's not. She freed that dissident. Should we give him back?
When you look at the
give Chen Guangdang back?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so can you say that was a good thing?
Sure, but this is not something that she's going to keep doing.
Paul, do you really think voters are going to go to the polls? She freed Guangdang. I'm there then.
This is the bigger issue.
What will go to the polls about is that the pivot to Asia also represents her understanding of workers and what the Asian economy, specifically in China, means for the American economy. That is something that she's been unapologetic about and was also forward-thinking with the very pivot that Professor Begala is talking about.
But again, none of these things, when you look at the big issues that faced her, the Arab Spring, when you look at what happened in Iran,
Asia not a big issue?
Iran, the Green Movement, Syria, Russia, Libya, overthrowing Gaddafi. You know, where are these tangible results that she's been able to take to voters? Saying in Asia, I pivoted to Asia, does not count.
We're going to have to take a quick break. We're going to get through all of those specifics, believe
I've got a long list.
But I want to point something out as a political strategist. Is this. My Republican friends are looking at the prospect of a Hillary campaign, and they have plan A, a plan B. I will let you know their secret strategy next. But first, this question. How long did Hillary Clinton's first memoir, Living History, spend on the New York Times bestsellers list? Was it 12 weeks, 34 weeks, or 55 weeks? We'll have the answer when we return.